Hello and welcome to Arsenal Analysed. I'm JC. I hope everyone is doing somewhat okay after the mediocre result you've just seen this afternoon. I'm sure pundits, fans, rival fans, celebration police, the lot of them will all be out in force with their opinions throughout Sunday. I'm sure we'll hear about it at some point. But nevertheless, we are here and I have a fantastic panel to help me break down what was a superstar elite 5 out of 5 performance in my opinion. So if you are looking forward to today's live show, do go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe if you're new around here. And I'm going to be coming to Tony first. First of all, thank you very much for sparing some of your time to join us this afternoon. But more importantly, give us your thoughts on that 5-star performance.
Well, the only thing that I can say is I really hope the celebration police have the right gear, because we just pretty much single-handedly relegated West Ham for this one. Jesus, this was the performance that I was expecting and that I was hoping to see. Now, I had said originally that I wanted us to humiliate West Ham. I'm sorry I said that. West Ham fans, if you're, I'm so sorry. I didn't really mean that. But in fairness, you kind of had it coming. This was I'm not going to say this was vengeance. This was more punishment. But realistically, this was genuinely a 5-star performance, elite all the way through. This was some of the quickest, fastest, most fluid football that I've ever seen the squad play. It was brilliant from start to finish. And what I love the most about this was the fact that even though we were already dominating as the second half was starting, we didn't let off, not much anyways, and we continued to go with the killer mentality that we needed to have. We went for the throat, and once we got it, we didn't let it go. And that's how it needs to be. I know it sounds brutal, but the fact is that this is still the Premier League. It doesn't matter. Any side could be 3-0 down, and they can still make a comeback. That's why it's the toughest league in the world. So the fact that we continued that savage performance all the way through to the end, that was perfect. And for me, this was the performance that we needed after what they did to us at the Emirates.
Yeah, and arguably I've seen some people say that it's Arsenal's best performance of the season so far. There's so many positives to take away from it. I'm sure that some of us will touch on it during today's show as we break it down. But up next, we've got Keith returning for, I think, the third time since we started doing these live shows again. How are you doing this afternoon, my friend? And what were your thoughts on today's performance?
It was all right, wasn't it? It was much easier than I thought it would be. I think the biggest thing you can say is when the cameras pan to the amount of West Ham fans leaving at half-time or before half-time even, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. Not from a club like West Ham. You know, they're steeped in history and they're renowned for having, you know, proper fans, and the amount of people that were leaving, I found it quite amazing. And I don't think it was a case of West Ham playing particularly badly. I think we just didn't give them a chance to play at all. I was thinking, I put in my notes actually, the first thing I put was, have we turned the corner? Obviously, we had the 5 against Crystal Palace, tough win against Forest, the win against Liverpool last week. And West Ham was kind of starting to move towards being our new Brighton, you know, the bogey team. And I was wondering what sort of performance we would put in. It was important that we played with tempo, intensity, and moved the ball quickly. And I was thinking, if we didn't do that today, maybe we haven't turned the corner. But I'm not going to say we're going to win the league, because I still think we'll probably realistically be fighting for third or maybe second. But I was all about the goal difference. You guys know what I'm like about goal difference. And
yeah,
to win by 7, so we would equal Liverpool's. But even so, I didn't see 6-0 at their place coming. So very, very happy.
No, I don't think anyone did. I think my prediction before the game was 2-1 Arsenal. I said it to many different people, but I thought it was going to be like a tough, close, horrible, nervy 2-1. Not one of those comfortable ones where you're kind of kicking yourself that the game wasn't put out of sight early doors. But yeah, pleasantly surprised by the result this afternoon. Finally, we have Neil returning from last week. How are you doing this afternoon, my friend? And what were your thoughts on the game?
I'm doing well, man. I think it's time for us to think about Saka and Mikel Arteta. You know, but in all, putting all jokes aside, at the first 5 minutes, I was thinking maybe this looks like it's gonna be a very close 1-0, just because of the way we started, especially on the right hand side with Kivio. He looked really shaky for the first couple of minutes. I was like, I hope this is not going to turn out to be we win against Liverpool and then we come and we have to struggle against a West Ham team. And I was completely wrong about that. It was a real shocker to see us going on and scoring 6. And when we went up to about 3-0 or so, and I looked at the goal difference, I was like, can we really push for like a 6 or 7 goals here? Because the way how we were looking after the 3 goals being scored, it looked like it's gonna be an ugly day at the office for West Ham. So I don't know. I was a little bit speechless at the end. I was like, I really wanted that 7 goal, but I guess we'll have to settle for 6.
Yeah, I'm sure there won't be too many complaining with 6, but you are right. When you look back at the game and the amount of opportunities that we created, I think Saka could have had 2 before we even scored our first as well. That's why, Keith was saying in our group chat before he took the penalty, big balls, because he'd missed a couple of good opportunities beforehand, and for him to step up and take the penalty the way he did. When we could have been 2 or 3 up by that point. It could have been 7, 8, 9 today. And I'm sure there were many Arsenal fans as well in that last 10, 15 minutes when Nweri came on, hoping he might get himself a little cheeky goal. How nice would that have been? But maybe we were asking for just a little bit too much. But we are going to head into the tactical side of this show now. So I'm going to bring up on screen the usual graphics that we use from SofaScore to have a look at a few things. And there was certainly a number of things that I noticed in the first part of this game. I'm sure that the panel also noticed some, if not more, than what I noticed. So if you are looking forward to this part of the show, do go ahead and smash the like button. So first things first, I will go through what I picked up in the first part of this game. Zinchenko obviously didn't start. We had Kivio at left back, which meant that we didn't have anyone naturally able to play in that inverted role. Now, typically, when Zinchenko is out and we play, for example, Tomiyasu, he quite comfortably plays in that role. I don't know if anyone else picked this up, but Ben White was often playing in that inverted role today. Not as much as Zinchenko does on the left-hand side, but he was doing it quite often from the right. And if we have a look here, we can see that he's slightly tucked in more than usual in comparison to playing quite wide. When we look at Kivio, for example, he's pushing much more left to that byline. And we can see his heat map here. He's tucked in a lot more than usual. So I don't know if any of you guys noticed that or picked that up in today's game at all. He's still doing his usual overlapping runs, don't get me wrong, but there were times where he tucked in midfield with Declan Rice. Did anyone else pick that up? Yeah,
not really.
I knew Keith.
With obviously Zinchenko is very good at that role, but when there was all this furore about us paying 50 million for Ben White, he'd spent a lot of time, especially at Leeds, playing as like a holding midfielder, hybrid central defender. So he's perfectly well versed in the role, and he's very good on the ball. And then, as you rightly said, Jake, he's still doing the overlapping runs. He's every bit as good in that role, I think, given time, as Zinchenko is, and I think a much better defender than Zinchenko as well. So it kind of makes sense. I thought when the inverted role first came in, it felt a bit off balance, like both fullbacks aren't doing it, but I can see why they do it from one side and not the other, because you don't need to overload from both sides, because then it leaves holes either side of your back four. But yeah, I wasn't expecting him to be doing that. I thought maybe just be Kivio doing it because we always do it from the left. But no, great spot, and I thought he did all right.
Yeah, he did. He did okay. What was quite interesting as well is that he wasn't tasked with doing it the entire game like Zinchenko would be or Tomiyasu would be from the left or the right. Another thing that I picked up as well early on, and I think this is where West Ham really started to struggle, was the fluidity in our midfield. And what I mean by that is, although there was a debate before kickoff as to whether or not Trossard or Kai Havertz was going to be playing as a false nine, I noticed quite often that Odegaard will drop into midfield with Declan Rice when Ben White pushed over to the right. And then we would have Kai Havertz and Trossard playing as the eights to create that box midfield still, meaning that we would still be able to create that overload. And there were times where Martinelli would come in midfield and Kai Havertz would go out on the left, or Trossard. So it was really, really, really fluid, because there was a couple of times in the first half where I noticed Martinelli popping up in centre mid and losing the ball. And I was like, what's he doing there? But it was that fluidity of interchangeable positions, something that I know Keith's talked about in the past, something that he's a big fan of and wants Arsenal to do more of. And today, I think it was a case of Arsenal sort of playing with the players they had available, but also utilising the fact that they could play in multiple positions. And they really did pull West Ham apart all over the pitch in that first sort of 10 to 15 minutes. Did anyone else pick up on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I saw, for the most part, Martinelli being, showing up in the midfield. But yeah, it was really nice to see. And I think it really threw West Ham off, because it wasn't like a settled formation. They didn't know, like they can keep up with picking up Martinelli in the midfield and leaving coming out of position and leaving a space open like that. So I thought effective. I think someone's listening to our chat, our WhatsApp chat.
It would certainly seem that way, wouldn't it? And I've just clicked on a few players there to give everyone an idea of just where some of those players ended up in certain parts of the game. But from an Arsenal point of view, shape-wise, on paper, average positions, I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary there. You could argue that maybe Martinelli's slightly deeper than he normally is, with Bukayo Saka slightly more advanced. But there are going to be games where Arsenal are looking to exploit certain areas more so than the other. Emerson, being the left back for West Ham, is a much more attacking fullback. Yeah. And I think that's why Bukayo Saka was so high and wide, because Arsenal knew that there were going to be opportunities throughout that game. When West Ham pressed and got forward, there were going to be gaps out wide. And going back to what we mentioned earlier on, Saka had 2-3 opportunities in that first sort of 10-15 minutes to put Arsenal ahead. Does anyone want to pick up on what West Ham done well in that first half, or generally through the game tactically? Any sort of real surprises from what they saw in the team shape? Anything that anyone picked up?
The only thing I picked up from West Ham, hold up, what was his name? Alvarez. Edison Alvarez really looks like Ray Romano, off Everybody Loves Raymond, and the voice of Manny the Woolly Mammoth. That was literally all I noticed about them. I think he really looks like Ray Romano. That was it. It was a forgettable performance, wasn't it? I don't think there's too much of anything that people will want to remember. Tony?
Yeah, realistically, though, it's the way in which we played this particular match. I think it was West Ham, or David Moyes, they might have been expecting, depending on the players that we had available, that maybe we're going to go and sort of go back to the traditional with Jesus at the front before they knew who was actually available. Before this match had even started, I remember kind of mentioning that I had to wonder if we were going to do something similar to what we did with Liverpool, which is what Keith had also mentioned before, which is sort of utilizing players in certain positions that we normally wouldn't see them too much in. And this kind of also has me wondering, is there a possibility that maybe we might be seeing Arteta implementing a new tactic, utilizing players in different positions that we haven't been seeing too much of? Is he maybe trying to break away from getting too comfortable with a certain formation with certain players where they usually are? It worked wonderfully against Liverpool, and we pretty much saw the results today. And the fact that we essentially dominated West Ham, realistically, the stats show when you actually stop just the first half alone, they had 0 shots on target. We had 7. The possession rate was 28% in comparison to 72%, with an accuracy of 69% that they had to our 92%. This was probably one of the most solid performances that I think we've seen in a while, and it comes from utilizing this particular tactic. So there's always a possibility that we're going to start seeing Arteta implementing something new that we haven't quite yet seen.
Yeah, well, as you say, it's now the second time that it's been picked up upon, at least by us anyway, that Arteta is starting to utilise people in more than one position throughout a 90-minute game. And it's worked very well against Liverpool. It's worked very well today against West Ham. And that's a great segue in terms of some of the stats that you mentioned into looking at some of the stats from the game. We'll look at the first half now. 4 goals to digest, 4 goals to break down. I don't think anyone was expecting 4 goals in the first half. I think when we got to 2-0, I thought, yeah, lovely. Half time now at 2-0, great. Oh, there's a third. Oh, there's a fourth. They just kept coming, it seemed. But looking at the stats from the first half, as you mentioned yourself there, Tony, an absolute blowaway performance, really. 72% possession, 2.8 nearly expected goals, 15 shots in total. West Ham didn't have a shot on target at all in the first half, and their one shot that they did have was from a very comfortable range, as we can see on screen. And one thing that I really did like from Arsenal in that first half, just before we look at the goals now, West Ham had 0 touches inside Arsenal's 18-yard box in the first 45, 0 touches. So it just goes to show how dominant of a performance that was in the first 45 minutes. So anyone got anything else to say on stats from the game, generally speaking, before we look at some goals?
Nope.
Righty then, let's get goal number 1 up on screen. This is going to be a really easy one to analyse, isn't it? Let's be honest. Arsenal, I think it's now 14 goals this season from set pieces, is still ranked number 1 for set piece goals. And I was listening to Paul Merson at half time when he was doing some analysis on some of the goals that Arsenal scored in the first half. And not to take any shine off of the goal itself, but he's absolutely spot on. There is nothing crazy about this goal in terms of there's no sort of wonderful or creative sort of routine that Arsenal have come up with here. And I think this is where West Ham will probably be really kicking themselves, is because it is what you would class as a ball to the back post, which has ended up in the back of the net. A great delivery from Declan Rice, who got himself a couple of assists today. As we can see, the ball comes in here, just there. You could argue that, West Ham could have potentially have defended a little bit better, maybe, with all of the Arsenal players grouping at the back post. Tony, if you had to if you were looking at it from a West Ham's point of view, how would you feel about this goal?
Yeah, the funny thing is I was actually watching this game on Telemundo, and they just love to overhype any kind of goal, regardless of what it was. But realistically, analyzing it really, really well, the thing is with this, it showed essentially West Ham's defending throughout most of this match. And again, I was a little bit surprised because the majority of the defending from West Ham was almost schoolboy defending. There was just really no answer to the fluidity. If I were West Ham, though, this is definitely a goal that I would have probably kicked myself in the teeth for, because this is something you really need to bring in more of a physical presence to try to, press back a little bit, but there wasn't really that there. It's difficult to say. Maybe they were nervous for whatever reason. Maybe the ball.
You think they were nervous because of Arsenal's reputation now? The reputation we have from scoring so many goals from set pieces.
Yep. Yeah, and that's literally that's kind of what I was thinking right over there. That would have been the primary thing. But it's just in general, it wasn't the most beautiful goal, but the thing is, it was a relatively simple one. It's one that we've done multiple times, so there wasn't anything special about it. It was just sloppy defending, as were essentially the majority of the other goals that we managed to get through. It's just a very, very rough defending from West Ham on this match today.
Yeah, agreed. Very, very rough indeed. So we've got the next goal up here. Keith, I want to grab your thoughts on this one, because because we were talking about in the chat about Bukayo Saka having, balls of steel. Unfortunately, I've not been able to find a clip of the run up to this goal. So I'll talk everyone through it, and then Keith, you can give me your thoughts. And the ball itself that put Bukayo Saka through, I don't know if anyone remembers, but going back to what I mentioned earlier with this kind of fluid system, Trossard had actually picked up the ball inside his own half and managed to play a ball over the top. He was playing quite deep, considering he was supposed to be playing as an 8, a left winger as a forward. Completely caught West Ham out. One of the first teams this side of Christmas not to play a low block outside of Liverpool and being punished for it. It was checked for offside. Saka obviously picks up the ball eventually with loads of grass in front of him to run into, goes around the goalkeeper, brought down, penalty. What can you tell us about this, Keith?
I think the first thing is we're not renowned as a counter-attacking side, but we're definitely bringing that into our game. There's a couple of goals recently where Raya's just got the ball in his hands. I think you highlighted it a couple of weeks ago, and as soon as he had the ball in his hands, Jesus was off. I think that was in the Crystal Palace game. So we're bringing that into our game. I do think yellow card was the right decision. Defender was coming round. And I don't like to see a goalkeeper sent off when they give a penalty, because it's kind of like a double jeopardy type thing. Goes back to Jens Lehmann in the Champions League final, I suppose. So I think it was the right decision. But the thing about Saka, obviously, famously missed the penalty in the Euro final against Italy. And then when I first saw him take the ball under his arm when we got a penalty the following season, I was like, damn, he's doing it again. And it strikes me that when he fails from the spot, he must right that wrong as soon as he possibly can.
Yeah.
And it was there were the 3 games when we imploded at the end of last season, 2-0 up against West Ham. He gets a penalty, or 2-1 up, he gets a penalty and missed it. And it's almost like when that penalty was given, even though he was the player running through, nobody else was taking that because he had to right that wrong, maybe in his own mindset. But also the fact that he was clean through. I hadn't picked up that it was Trossard that had played the ball through. It's a great spot on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as I was watching, I was thinking I'd actually pick the other side of the keeper to go, because Saka quite often goes to the keeper's left. But I mean, look at it, his body shape, and the higher the level you're at. I used to play park football, I used to take penalties, but I'd use the eyes. It's a decent goalkeeper will look at the striker's body shape when they're striking the ball. And his body shape is absolutely elite when he takes a penalty. It shows that he's showing the keeper where he wants them to go, and then he goes the other way. And there's very few players that can do that.
Yeah, he's one of several penalty takers at Arsenal now, isn't he? And I'm glad he's back on spot kicks, because after he missed a couple, you did wonder whether or not it knocked his morale a little bit too much. And like you pointed out, coincidentally today, he picks up the ball to take a penalty against the team he last missed one against. From a psychological point of view, that must be huge for him now moving forward. So I'd be really interested to see if Saka does take Arsenal's next penalty whenever we do get one. So to Arsenal's delight, as I mentioned a moment ago, I thought that, Arsenal were going to stroll now into half-time at 2-0. I was quite happy at this point. I'm sure everyone else was quite content as well. But on the 43rd minute, West Ham gave away a bit of a cheap foul, coup foul, silly free kick just before half time, really. At 2-0, it's not the greatest result, but, it's salvageable. Get the boys in at half time, make some changes, and, maybe the second half's a little bit different. But they gave away this silly free kick just before half time, which is delivered in from Declan Rice from the left-hand side. It's a peach of a ball as well. Right on the tip of the edge of the 6-yard box, and I couldn't see at first whether or not it was Kai Havertz or Gabriel that had knocked it in. So when we fast forward it here, you can see them both there, literally on the edge of the 6-yard box, to make it 3-0. So Neil, talk us through your thoughts about the goal. And like I did with Tony, if you were a West Ham fan, the nature in which we concede a goal at this time of the game, how would it make you feel?
You would ask. So we've had this happen to Arsenal. Conceding just before halftime. It's something that you just don't feel good about. You can't put any other words to it. I thought that, when I paid attention to Kai Havertz a lot during this game, out of the 6 goals, you would think that he would at least get one of those.
Yeah.
But if you look at Gabriel in this frame, he follows through, making sure he connects, he gets something onto the header. Kai Havertz doesn't really have that in his game, I guess. It's like another opportunity that we had where Saka was coming in and he kind of dinged the ball over Ariel, but you would have thought that Kai Havertz would have continued his run and at least tap the ball into the back of the net. He doesn't have that follow through in his game. And I think that's something that he really needs to work on. Not trying to point any fingers but it's something that these things matter, because you can be down 2-0 and before you know it, West Ham is back in it with two opportunities, and then you'd ask yourself, what would have happened if Havertz had followed through and get connection onto the ball if Gabriel wasn't there? So, great stuff by Gabriel and Saliba, both centre-backs getting on the score sheet. You would want them probably playing on the front line if Gabriel Jesus is injured. Because between the two of them, we have six goals for the season.
Yeah, they've got more than some strikers this season.
Yeah, just between the two of them. So, great ball by Declan Rice in as well. But yeah, man, I would like to see, not trying to rain on this, but just I want to see a little bit more from Kai Havertz. Other than the work rate, other than causing a little bit of havoc, I want to see him getting on the score sheet, especially when you have 6 goals on at the end of the game.
Yeah, I can't think of too many notable parts of the game either where he had opportunities to shoot, and I don't know if that's down to positioning. I don't know if that's down to the role that Arteta's asked him to play. I'm not too sure. And, looking at this move here in particular, you've got to ask the question, what is he being asked to do from these set piece routines? And what I mean by that is you've got 3 West Ham players here in effectively no man's land. Are they sort of looking at the fact that there is a Kai Havertz just behind them and they wanted to keep an eye on that, which allows Gabriel to run into that space? Is that we've seen similar sorts of routines the other week where Trossard had blocked Anderson against Crystal Palace in order for Gabriel to score the goal and leap above the Crystal Palace defenders. And it's really difficult to tell whether that's the case with Arsenal, because we are so creative with our set piece routines that, I don't know if this was intentional or pre-planned. No idea whatsoever. But either way, it was a great goal. And as you say, it's really, really, really nice to see Arsenal get a third at the time in the game. And we were given yet another goal beyond the 45th minute. This time Trossard, who in my opinion is one of the best natural finishers at the club. And again, it's just really sloppy football from West Ham. Unfortunately, we can't go back far enough in this clip. West Ham lose the ball just before this clip starts in midfield, which is picked up by Trossard, who eventually plays the ball to Odegaard, who plays it back, finds himself with a yard of space inside the 18-yard box and puts it in top bins. Tony, I'm going to come to you on this one. Talk me through your thoughts on this goal. And again, I suppose similar to Neil, from a West Ham's fans' point of view, like how damaging is this before half-time to concede a goal in this manner?
3-0 before half was bad. 4-0, it really was pretty much game over at this particular point. And again, I had seen this just before Trossard picked it up. Again, it was more sloppy defending from West Ham. It really was the highlight of their defense pretty much the entire time. But first of all, excellent pass, excellent vision as well from Trossard. First of all, he's going to try to pick out Odegaard. But at the same time, you really got to love the fluidity and how fast we are and the selflessness of the players, because Odegaard on the way down, he would have known whether he had the actual clearance to make the shot or not. Or there's also the possibility that this was already practiced several times, as they usually do. And he was actually waiting for either Trossard or one of the other forward players to get into a better position to pass the ball to them. Regardless, the way in which it was finished by Trossard, very, very, very smooth. It wasn't as clinical, it wasn't as pretty as the last week's goal against Liverpool, but the way in which he did it once again with the smoothness, it really, really does highlight why he is such an excellent, excellent finisher for the club. But kudos definitely to both players, to Odegaard and to Trossard, because regardless of who was going to take that shot, the selflessness that they demonstrated, it shows the mentality that we have now.
Yeah, and they must have been pinching themselves. You know, if we go back a little bit here as well, you know, you look at the space that Odegaard has to run into here, and the way that the West Ham defenders just continue to back off before he makes the pass. And then again, the same when Trossard eventually picks the ball up here. You've got, you know, 3 or 4 West Ham defenders around him, and rather than making or putting him under pressure, they all back off. Look, they all. I don't get it. I really, really, really don't get it. I got the feeling that at 3-0, they were really scared to make a mistake. They were really scared just in general of everything that Arsenal were putting together. Keith, I'm going to come to you on the next goal, but just before we do so, any thoughts from the first half for the goals that I didn't mention?
No, I mean, I'm pleased you didn't come to me for Trossard's goal, because I actually can't remember that going in. I think I was just so like, 4-0 up. 4-0 up is not even half time. And I couldn't actually remember the goal. I remember the finish, but not what happened before. So well played there, Tony. Dug us out.
Absolutely. So next goal was, I can't keep track of the goals. This is how bad it is, isn't it? It's so bad. Like I've literally had to refer to my notes because I'm like, right, who scored next?
With Saka,
yeah.
Oh yeah, it was Saka next. I believe that Odegaard played the ball between the 2 defenders, the fullback and the centre back, which is the last place defenders want to see your inside forward receiving the ball before cutting inside and scoring. So talk us through this goal, Keith.
The thing that strikes me when you look at the guy on the ball now, did the simple things right all day long, and you can almost see from the demeanour of like the West Ham, there two banks there. They've just gone off entirely. They've gone right off the boil, and the ball that Odegaard played through was, I mean, it was great. But again, look at how much time he's got on the ball. He's just received it, and he's in 5 to 10 yards of space there to receive the ball. And whether they were just terrified of what he was going to do, or whether they just thought, you know what, we can't deal with this today. And it was probably the easiest goal Saka will score for a long time. I mean,
as we fast forward here,
space and time.
It's the way that the West Ham defender allows Saka to get across him. You know he's going to cut in on his left foot.
Yeah, of course.
You know.
Yeah.
You want to be sending him down here. You want to be sending him down here, pushing him onto his right foot, and maybe having a shot, right? But he allows him to get inside.
Yeah. But the thing is, once he's made that run, I mean, the defender, 27, whoever that was, is like very poor defending there. The keeper hasn't got a prayer, because Saka can go either side with that vertical left foot of his. Quite often he'll go back stick and bend it round him, which is what the keeper's anticipating. Again, is with his body shape. The keeper's trying to read what he thinks he'll do by that, and he literally just passed it in at the front stick, isn't he?
Yeah, well, like you say, he can pick anywhere he wants. He's driven it low and hard, and it would be more difficult for Saka not to score from there than it would have been to score from there. And then we look at the final goal, which I don't believe is on here yet. Let's have a look. Which was the one from Declan Rice. So I'll talk you through the goal very, very quickly. I believe there was a pass made onto the edge of the box. Yeah, unfortunately, they haven't clipped the goal up for one reason or another. But I remember I think it was Odegaard and Trossard they both went for the ball at the same time on the edge of the 18-yard box and effectively got in each other's way. Because completely missed the ball altogether. And then it fell to, of all people, Declan Rice, who spanks it from 20, 25 yards, whatever it was, rifles into the side of the netting, and like the gentleman that you expect him to be, doesn't celebrate. I think there was a comment from one of the commentators where he said that you could looking at Declan Rice's face, it was like he could feel the pain the West Ham fans were going through, because he's come up through the ranks there, isn't it? And it was like he didn't want to sort of put the knife in, if you will. Any thoughts on this goal? Who wants to sort of polish off with the last one?
I think. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
Oh no, man. You go. I'm sure we all got a lot to say about this one.
I don't know, man. I just feel like Rice probably just told Trossard and Odegaard, "Don't worry, boys, I got this one," and boom, in the back of the net. I was just that 6th goal against his old club, against his, being back at the London Stadium. I don't know. You can't write this. It's just something that you're gonna see at match of the day. You're gonna see goal, probably top 5 goals of the season. You're gonna see it because it's against his old club, on his old ground. So hats off to Rice, man. We robbed West Ham daylight robbery, paying 105 million. What was it? 103 million pounds for him. Daylight robbery, man.
Yeah, it feels like we talk about it every week, doesn't it? When it comes to Declan Rice's price tag being a bit of a bargain, but he comes up with the big goals now, and thankfully in this game it wasn't necessarily a big goal in the course of the game. A big goal for him personally, obviously scoring against his old club, but he scored now, the winning goal against Luton. He scored that goal against Manchester United in the dying embers of the game, and there was the one against Chelsea as well, where he put it into an empty net. So he does love a goal at a good time, or an important goal against an important fixture, which is quite interesting. Any further thoughts to the goals in this game at all, Tony, Keith?
No, it was pretty much. I think for me the number one thing was the fact that how he reacted after that goal. It really was a gentleman type of reaction. We know how long he was with them. We know what he meant to the club. And obviously, he still has emotional attachment to a certain degree to West Ham. But the fact that he celebrated like that in such a calm demeanor, and not rubbing it into the face of the West Ham fans who were already injured enough as it was, that shows pure class by him. The second thing is, again, we got a midfielder who scored a goal, and I love to see that. If it's not Odegaard, I love to see him scoring. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's something that we needed, wasn't it? A midfield player that's going to have goals to his game, especially after the season that Saka had last year, bringing in someone who's going to not necessarily replicate what he done, but someone who was also going to score goals from midfield, not just Martin Odegaard. Keith, I'm going to come to you on this one before we have a look at some players today. It is a player that I want to talk about. How massive was Nwiri coming on today? Not just the fact that he came on like he did the first time where it was just for a few minutes. He came on with a good sort of 15 plus minutes to go in this game at the age of 16, regularly trains around the first team. Tell us, what are your thoughts? How important is this? How big is it?
I think he's laid down a marker. I got the sense when Ethan was brought in, was it against Brentford, his previous game when he was 15? Yeah. And it was almost like it was portrayed as a little bit of a publicity stunt. The fact that he got the nod today, and us lot all in our chat, especially the game against the PSV game, the dead rubber, we were crying out for him and Real Waters to get a nod. I really want to see Real Waters because I've seen some of the footage of this kid playing for the under-23s, and he is so fast, and I really want to see what he's made of. But today obviously wasn't the right game for him to come on because they still had decent wide players, and you throw a kid into that game and he could falter. But Ethan Nwaneri, when he came on, he didn't look out of place. He's 16 years old. I think he might have given the ball away a couple of times. There was a time with a bit more confidence and a few more hours in his legs, he probably would have taken a shot. But his distribution, his positioning, everything about him at such a young age. I mean, the kid's still at school, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
You know, it's and you know, when he goes to school tomorrow, everyone's like, "What did you get up to at the weekend?" He's like, I played against West Ham in the Premier League. What about you? Oh, I went to McDonald's. There are other brands available, obviously, but I think it's a really, really huge marker has been laid down in the sand here with Arteta saying, "I'm going to use this kid. I've got faith in him." Because, you know, there were other options that could have been used. He could have changed the formation, but he decided just to put him on where he was.
Yeah.
And he's comfortable in, the player he's replaced. And like I said, he didn't look out of place.
He didn't look out of place as well. And we have to also remember as well, Jorginho was on the bench. So, you know, this whole kind of Arteta playing it safe and not wanting to use youth and that kind of thing, you know, he could have quite easily have brought Jorginho on to see out the game, and we all know how good he is at game management. Jorginho, that is, you know, seeing out these types of games. So yeah, remember the name, I suppose. It'd be interesting to see whether we see him again in an Arsenal shirt this season. I don't know if there'll be too many more games where we're 5 or 6 up and Arteta wants to do something like that, but we'll have to wait and see. We might be pleasantly surprised. We're going to go through some players now. Like I said, we're going to go through 3 or 4 players. If you've watched the show before, 3 or 4 players, and go through their stats, have a conversation around them. We're going to pick one each today. Could be for good reasons, could be for bad reasons. I'm thinking it's probably going to be for good reasons today, given that we've won 6-0. Just a guess of mine. Tony, I'm going to come to you first, and we'll just go down. And I'll finish up. I'll pick up the dregs, if you will. So, Tony, who is your player that you'd like to discuss? And we'll go through some stats.
Jesus, that's like asking me which one of my cats do I like more. Not the easiest one. There was, wow. I mean, the thing is that with such a performance like this, it's always difficult to choose because there's so many different names.
Yeah.
I'm just, you know, you could always pick out the most obvious ones, which would be the goal scorers, you know, Saka or Rice or what have you. But I would like to give just a little bit of a shout out and some attention to David Raya for, first of all, this man kept his cool throughout the entire match. He didn't have a whole lot that needed to be done. Obviously, West Ham were absolutely not at this race today. But besides that, his distribution was actually quite low, which is one of the reasons that I think, you know, Arteta's been somewhat picking him over Ramsdale. But he did, you know, he performed as well as he should have been doing for a match of this caliber. So well done to him. Other than that, the other player that I had also thought about was the individual that was mentioned, which was Nwaneri. Again, he didn't exactly have, you know, a colossal amount of game time, and this was, even though, yes, we were dominating by this particular point, it's still a Premier League side, regardless of how much you're winning by. And yeah, Keith nailed it right on the head. He did not look out of place here. This is going to be one of the players that, as long as he continues to train and build up his physicality, which is the same thing that I would say to any of the other academy players, is always build up your physicality, because the training for Arsenal will destroy your body. I think he's got a potential to really, really shine within the coming years. And I think he could actually make it into the first squad. Yeah,
I think he will. Definitely more so next season when we're back involved in all the cup competitions. You know, those group games in the Champions League that might not necessarily mean something once you've qualified. He'll definitely get more minutes. And touching on David Raya just very, very quickly, only had the one save to make, 2 high claims, which is a big positive over Aaron Ramsdale, or that's at least what the debate says. 100% distribution as well, which is absolutely perfect.
That's why I chose him right over there, is because of that, specifically for the distribution. So that's what I was looking at on the stats.
Yeah, especially in that first half where West Ham did come forward a little bit when the game was still at 0-0. He did have things to do. So yeah, really, really, really important. Neil, who was your player that you'd like to discuss today?
I was also going to touch on Raya. You know, I really want to. You can talk all day about our front six. You know, they did immensely today. But when you look at some of the instances where Raya had to. He's really coming into what he was probably brought in to do, which is to get the ball back out quicker. So kind of what Arteta has been doing in the past couple of years. Every time the ball goes out to play, he's right there like a ball boy, putting it back into one of his players' hands to get the game going again.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see. I hope that that's just gonna continue. And in addition to Raya, I want to just point out Trossard, man. Like he has been such a good signing since he joined from Brighton, and we discussed it in the WhatsApp group this week about how much of a bullet we dodged with not signing Mudryk. You would ask the question, how well would have Mudryk settled in if he had joined Arsenal? But I mean, look at what Trossard has been doing. Every time he comes on, he's had one or two probably bad games. But starting this game, he just proves his worth, and continues to just do well,
Yeah.
on both sides.
Yeah, no, and he is really, really important as well. When Arsenal were looking to sign a forward at the time, we were looking to sign a forward who could play in, multiple different positions. And that is something that Trossard certainly does offer you. And over the last few weeks now, we've seen him start on the left. We've seen him come on the pitch on the left and get a goal against Liverpool. We've seen him today get a goal, being rewarded for his performances. He then gives back a goal to Arteta. Arguably, you could say that he should have been credited with an assist for the Bukayo Saka penalty. Obviously, he won't get one, but he was the one who helped create that. So there's a lot of positive that comes from Leandro Trossard, and I think a few people were surprised to see him start today up top. Arguably up top, maybe it wasn't. Maybe he was playing as a left eight. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be really, really interesting.
I add one more thing to it. There's that next to Jesus, he's probably the second best technically on the ball. Like what he does, trickery wise, he's able to drop a shoulder, remove 2-3 players out of the game, and move the ball forward. So there's a lot of positives that we could talk about when it comes to Leandro Trossard.
Loads and loads and loads. And I don't think it'll be the last time we're talking about him this season. I do expect him to get, or at least be involved in, many more goals between now and the end of the season. Okie dokie. Keith, who would you like to have a little talk about that we haven't spoken about already?
Well, I've got about 2 or 3, Jake. So why don't you say who you want to talk about, and I'll leave them alone.
Fair. I'll cop out a little bit because we've got a comment coming in from the chat saying that they want to have a look at Ben White. So I'll go with Ben White because I think some of the more other obvious ones will be the lads that are highlighted here in blue with 9s, or possibly our centre-backs as well, who both picked up a goal today. But looking at Ben White, I think since Dubai, he has been Mr. Consistency at right back. Yeah. Going outside of today's performance, he was unbelievable against Liverpool. And I think sometimes defenders, when they don't get on the score sheet, their work doesn't always get the praise that they deserve, especially in a game where you win kind of 6-0. You don't really talk about the hard work that maybe the back line does. And Ben White, as we already kind of spoke about earlier on, he was given a role today that he's probably not used to doing. And he's done it very, very well, having tucked it into midfield. Got himself an assist, just the 2 tackles, but that was probably more because Arsenal dominated possession. 4 ground duels out of 5, so really, really, really high percentages there. And 97 pass completion rate as well, which is top stuff, and what you kind of expect and what we've come to expect from Ben White, especially over the last few weeks. So, yeah, a shout out to defenders, I suppose, is where I'm going with this one. Keith, who did you have in mind?
Cannot believe I'm going forth and I get to talk about Declan Rice. Did not see this coming at all. As soon as I thought,
I was expecting them to already be taken as well, to be fair.
Just really quickly, 2 other players. Odegaard got in Trossard's way twice in the second half. Luckily, the second time Declan Rice scored. But I was watching and thinking, this geezer wants to get on the score sheet so bad. And if we got a penalty late on, that ball was going to be tucked under his arm. And also Kai Havertz, Chippy Boy mentioned it earlier about the stuff he does. I think there's a lot of stuff he does that he's is coached into doing that we don't necessarily notice. It's almost like the unsung hero of the team, it seems he's starting to become. And there was a chance Trossard had when their keeper made an absolute worldie when he volleyed it or half volleyed it at the back stick not long before we scored. And Kai Havertz just done one of them little dummies right at the end and took the 2 defenders out of the game. And I thought that was worthy of note. But Declan Rice, I had him nailed on as man of the match after about 20 minutes. Bearing in mind when he'd played against West Ham since joining us, he'd not done so well. He was getting some boos. It obviously wasn't the whole crowd that were booing him, because a place that size, it would have been much louder. But it must be really painful for him to hear that, because he left them in the most respectful way possible. He's come through the ranks there. He's made it quite clear he's a West Ham fan. He's just moved to a club where he can, fulfill his career. And to go back and have that sort of treatment must be difficult for him.
Yeah.
I don't remember him giving the ball away once. He broke up their place so many times. And then there was one of the corners in the first half, I think it was just before the one we scored from, he almost put a little stutter into the run-up, almost like a Jorginho penalty, if you like. And I don't know if that was something that was part of, the coaching with our amazing set pieces, or whether it was just something that happened. But I think that's a really, really interesting thing to do, because you don't see players stutter a run-up for a corner. You see it for a free kick and a penalty. A lot, but just to give your attacking players just that extra half a yard. If that's something we're doing or something he thought of, I think that's genius. And then obviously the goal and how he conducted himself, as Chippy said, he did pat the badge, but I think that was as if to say to the West Ham fans, thanks, but this is where I am now. Instantly. And he's probably thinking, I've wasted a worldie of a goal there. The celebration that I would have put in if I'd have finished a goal like that, I'd still be running around the pitch. And he must have wanted to do the world's greatest knee slide, but knew he couldn't. But just instantly, and it was the way he went like that. It was almost like saying, let's draw a line under it now. We're done. Let's move on. But I thought he was imperious from start to finish.
He was. You look at his stats today: a goal, 2 assists, 84 touches, 93% passing completion, 4 out of 5 crosses completed. This right here as well. He was only involved in 2 ground duels in the whole game, and some people might look at that as a negative thing. And I've touched on this before. The reason why he's not been involved in the ground duels that he's been in is because of how he reads the game. He doesn't need to.
But Razy is what it is.
Exactly.
Yes.
You've already failed if you're having to make a tackle. So, that speaks absolute volumes. And to touch on Martin Odegaard as well, I wasn't going to speak about Martin Odegaard, but you brought him up, and then I brought his stats up, and I saw a stat, and I was like, bloody hell! Involved in 7 key passes today. 7 key passes. 95% pass completion. She's just absolutely outrageous. Obviously credited with 2 assists as well. And I think to finish up the show, I wasn't going to talk about him, not for any particular reason, but I think it would be rude not to, is Bukayo Saka. He was credited with man of the match after the game. I saw his post-match interview with Martin Odegaard. Me and Neil touched on this last week. Apparently, he's not playing very well at the moment. According to some people, I don't know where people get this information from, but he's managed to score 2 goals today, get man of the match, probably could have had 4 or 5. He also became Arsenal's youngest ever player to reach 50 goals as well, a record that stood for 45 years. But yeah, he's not having a very good season.
Not at all.
Needs to up his levels. 3 key passes as well.
GA in just over 200 games as well. Bear in mind, he started playing for us when he was 17, 18.
I think did he get an assist today?
He's off the boil. Probably, I don't know. Can't remember. To be honest.
Didn't get. It's one of those ones though, isn't it, with Bukayo Saka, where it's like you just every week, whether it's a goal or an assist or multiple goals and assists, you just it's just. If Arsenal score a goal or have got goals on the score sheet, you just kind of assume in one way or another that he's been involved. And I suppose...
Old is he now, Jake?
Sorry?
How old is he now?
He 22. Is he 22? 21, 22?
22.
22.
Madness.
Yeah, 22. There we are. 23 games, 10 goals this season. Yeah,
Wow.
and 7 assists. So yeah, 17 goal involvements in 23 games, but he's not doing very well at 22. He's not doing very well at all. So yeah, oof. Anywho. That's going to wrap things up for today's live show. If you have enjoyed, please do go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new around here. I'd also like to thank all of my guests, Tony, Neil, and Keith, for spending some of their afternoon to miss the Man United game. You'd want to miss that and spend it with me instead. So thank you all very much. I hope you have enjoyed. But for now, I'm JC. This is Arsenal Analysed. Take care, stay safe, and come on, you Gunners.